Good evening and welcome to another edition of What's Happening. I'm Elliot Margolis and I'm here with my co-host Gail Burke, and we have a special guest tonight. As you know, it's election season, so we have Richard Baker running for Governor's Council. Before we talk to Richard and grill him a little bit, Gail has a top of the page that she would like to talk about.
Good evening, everyone. I'm sure many of you have been watching the proceedings of the Judge Kavanaugh hearing today, and I just wanted to add my 2 cents worth. I just watched a good man face his accusers and bare his soul. It was difficult to watch, but the Democrats have a lot to answer for putting this man through it. They have systematically tried to destroy a man, his reputation, and his family. They have been assisted by the media with no boundaries, no conscience, and no respect for the law. Innocent until proven guilty no longer exists for any of them. Shame on them for their lust for power. It's not the first time they have disgraced themselves. Remember, Ted Kennedy helped to destroy Supreme Court nominee Robert Bork. It worked then. Clarence Thomas faced the Democrats and sexual allegations by Anita Hill. The Democrats lost, and Justice Thomas was confirmed. Let's pray that Judge Kavanaugh will overcome the terrible allegations that he has been subjected to and be confirmed as a Supreme Court justice. Here's a quote from John Adams. "Facts are stubborn things, and whatever may be our wishes, our inclinations, or the dictates of our passions, they cannot alter the state of facts and evidence."
Okay, so here we go. Richard, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Elliot, and nice
Welcome,
to be here,
Rich.
Gail. I really appreciate you inviting me to come and talk.
Well, so let's talk. First of all, Governor's Council is not what everybody most people don't know what Governor's Council does. So the first question would be, why are you running for Governor's Council and what does it do?
I think Gail alluded to the importance of good judges and the importance of vetting judges. Governor's counselors vet the judges that the governor appoints. In Massachusetts, we don't let the Senate Judiciary Committee do it. We don't elect judges in Massachusetts. We elect governor's counselors to be the gateway to the Massachusetts judiciary. And what you've seen with the hearings on Judge Kavanaugh on how important it is. And it's important that you have good governor's counselors, that you don't get into a witch hunt on an innocent man, but that you vet all of the facts, that you vet the judge, you look at his background, and you try to discern what is true. It is a critical position in Massachusetts, and not very well known.
Now, do you do it, each Governor's Council, do they do it on their own? Do you do it together? Do you have sources that you use to vet these people?
A good governor's counselor, and the best I've ever seen was Ann Manning Martin, who represented this district. And she would have her sources in the courthouses and the attorneys throughout Massachusetts. And she would do her homework during the time when she wasn't down at the State House, asking questions, finding out, okay, what's the background on this judge? Is this man a man that is out just for power?
Man or woman?
Man or woman, right. Is this person just someone that's out for power, or is this someone that it wants to serve for the good of the community, that is doing this to see that we have justice in Massachusetts? Now, you do your research outside, then each Wednesday the Governor's Council meets. Usually there's hearings in the morning, sometimes in the afternoon, where, just like you saw today, they ask the judge questions, and they try to discern further about what the heart is of this man or woman that is looking to be a judge. And so it's a very important part of the process to question them, to really look at them and analyze who this judicial candidate is. Then they usually wait a week, and the following week they'll take the vote. And if there's a majority that say to seat the judge, he is seated, or he or she is seated on the bench.
How? Oh, go ahead, Elliot.
Well, thank you. We have a situation where we have a moronic judge who is letting a murderer loose, you know.
Judge Feely.
Yeah.
I know about Judge Feely.
Okay. So he obviously passed through the governor's council.
Right.
Based on what he has done, can the governor's council ask for his impeachment?
Technically, it's the governor that asks for the impeachment. The governor. There's three ways to impeach a judge. So, the governor's council could be. The governor could ask to remove a judge. The governor's council could vote in the affirmative to remove him, and then both the governor's council and the governor go to a joint session of the House and Senate, and they vote up or down. And if the House and Senate say to remove him, he is removed. That's one method. Second method is the House could pass a bill of impeachment, and the Senate could run a trial and impeach the judge that way. The third way happened to Judge Estes about 6 or 8 months ago. Judge Estes was found to have had sexual misconduct in the courtroom, and the Judicial Conduct Committee, which is run by the Supreme Judicial Court, investigated it, found not only did it happen, but he was not repentant of it, and they recommended that he be suspended without pay in 30 days, i.e., you've got 30 days to resign if you want your pension. And he took the hint and resigned. So there's three ways to get a judge off the bench, and it worked for Judge Estes. Judge Feely, they're still working on it, but by the time you get to another legislative session and get the bills in place, he'll reach 70 years old and will be forced to retire anyways.
What is the makeup of the governor's council? I know you have to have a certain number of Republicans and Democrats. Is that how it works? No?
Nope. These are the governor's council is elected from regions of the state. Mine is the 5th Governor's Council District, runs from Pepperell to Rockport, Salem to Salisbury. It's 1/8 of the state, so it's a bigger district than a congressional district, and there are 8 governor's councilors. Right now, there is one governor's council that's a Republican, that's Jen Casey out of Worcester County, and 7 Democrats. So
Sounds like the legislature.
It's a worse ratio than the legislature,
Yeah.
because it's 12% in the 12.5% in the governor's council, and the Republicans have a better ratio in the Senate and the House. So we got to flip at least one seat this time, just to bring balance, balance to Beacon Hill, so that you get both points of view. And you want that for the judiciary. You really want a balanced point of view, people looking at them from all sides.
You know, that's so true. When you look past, at American history, for instance, let's go back to Reagan. Reagan and Tip O'Neill worked together. Guess what happened? We had good government. Mm-hmm. Clinton and Newt Gingrich worked together. We had good government.
Right.
Since then, nobody's working together. We have lousy government.
What I like to say is, I'm half right, the Democrats are half right. If we talk together and, more importantly, listen to each other, we can get it 3/4 right. And you see that in Massachusetts. You see that with Charlie Baker working with the House and Senate in Massachusetts. They say he does a much better job than Deval Patrick did working with his own party down there, because he listens. He knows to talk to them, to listen to the concerns of the leadership, and we get pretty good government for running the state. We need that balance, though, on the governor's council.
But the problem with Charlie Baker is he's a Republican, but he's faced with mostly Democrats. Right. So even if he went to veto a bill, the veto would be overturned.
He vetoed a number of spending items in the last budget. They were all overturned.
Yeah.
I think he vetoed, if I remember right, he vetoed the pay raise. It was overturned.
Yeah.
And when he comes to putting judges, he knows he's got to get at least 3 Democrats to go with him, or he can't seat the judge. So he doesn't have free reign. And there isn't even a balance there.
No.
Is there term limits for governor's council?
No, there's no term limits in Massachusetts.
For
Well, there is
anybody?
For governor.
Right. I mean,
That's too bad.
it's not the citizen legislature that the founders of the Constitution
yeah.
originally thought. We've got professional politicians in there. And it would be nice to turn people over. I mean, you want people to stay there a good 10 or so years would be fine, but not...
Not to make it their lifetime job.
Jim Rosselli over in Wilmington served for 40 some odd years before he died campaigning. And it just, for
not
someone that
funny,
loves
but-
politics, I guess that's the ultimate way to go. But he was out campaigning, speaking to the, I don't know if it was Boy Scouts or the baseball team or something, and died on the giving a speech.
So what else does the governor's council do? I mean, you meet every week, once a week, and outside of judges, because you're not, I assume you're not always dealing with judges.
Right.
What
There's
else do you do?
Parole board, labor board, a couple of other boards like that.
Do you appoint parole board people?
We approve the governor's appointment for the parole board.
Okay. That must be a tough job,
Oh,
the
yeah.
parole board.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
would think so.
You've got to listen to, talk about really having to look into somebody's heart and see, okay, is this person just someone that made a mistake, or is this a hardened criminal that as soon as he gets out, he's going to be right back in?
Yeah.
In addition, and this is a hard job the Governor's Council has, is commutation of sentences. Now, Governor Baker has not sent anybody any sentences to be commuted or pardoned. I think Deval Patrick sent 2 or 3 in over his 8 years, so it's not done very often. But there's another case. You've got to look at the person's heart. You've got to look deep into the facts and what's going on before you make that decision. And there's one other aspect of the Governor's Council, and this one doesn't get a whole lot of press, and looking at the Governor's Council, it doesn't get a whole lot of time on their agenda. The Governor's Council signs the warrant for the state of Massachusetts. Now, city government and school committees, they all know what the warrant is. That's the approval to write the checks to pay the bills. So the Governor's Council, by giving its approval, says it's okay for the state treasurer to sign the checks for the Massachusetts payroll and for all the contracts that the state has to pay all of its bills. Looking at the minutes of the Governor's Council, every week they spend about 15 seconds running a vote to approve another $1 billion to be spent. That's not approving the warrant. The job of a Governor's Council in the approval of the warrant is to check the spending against the budget. The legislature sets the budget, but you've got to make sure you're not overrunning the budget in any of the particular buckets in the budget. You should also make sure the procurement rules are being followed.
What do other states do? Do most states have a governor's council, or are they all over the place?
New Hampshire's the only other one that has a governor's council.
Really?
I think Virginia had one for years, and then they disbanded it.
And what happens if there isn't any governor's council?
I don't know who signs the warrant in those states.
Maybe the legislature?
Could be the legislature. For judges, in most states, they're elected. In New Hampshire, with their governor's council, every state contract more than $10,000, the governor's council signs. So they actually look at all those big contracts and make sure that that they've followed the proper procedure.
So what makes you qualified for this job?
I know how to hire people. I've spent 25, 30 years in industry, as an engineering manager, and then later as director of intellectual property, managing the patent licensing part of companies. I've hired lawyers. I've hired engineers. I've probably interviewed hundreds of people. I know what to look for. I know how to ask the questions. And I do a lot of work with the judiciary. I am not a lawyer, but
That's a plus, by the way.
it
Yeah,
is.
it is.
But I work with the patent office. I work with both the administrative law judges in the patent office and patent examiners. I do a lot of work with patent litigation as an expert witness, as a manager of litigations. I know what makes a good judge, and I've seen a number of really good judges at the federal level. And I want to make sure that we get that quality judge in Massachusetts. Because for most people, one of their biggest days in life is when they have to step in that courtroom. Something has gone wrong in their life, and they've got to appear before a judge. We want to make sure they've got a good judge to listen to their case, and they may not agree with what the judge says, but we want to make sure that they don't feel that they were treated unfairly. And the way we do that is making sure we've got good judges, and that starts with a good governor's council.
Now, you have some pretty good endorsements. I see that State Rep Lenny Mira,
Right?
State Rep Jim Lyons. He's from Andover, isn't he?
Yes, he is. He's part of
and
my
he's a Republican, of course. And State Rep Brad Hill.
Brad's
They all endorse you. So
Right.
those are pretty significant
and
endorsements.
I endorse all of them because they've done a wonderful job down at the State House for us.
Yeah.
No, I
that's
know
great.
Brad has. Brad's been good. I've known Brad for more years than I want to admit.
Well,
But
let me tell you a story about Brad. I filed a bill to change the ballot because the ballot for governor's council just says counselor. So, here in Beverly, you see the word counselor, you think it's a city council.
councilor,
And then
yeah.
why are there people from West Newbury and Gloucester on there for city council? So it's misleading. So I filed a bill to change that to governor's council. And I just was walking into the hearing. I saw Brad Hill in the hallway, and I told him what I was doing. He followed me in. He testified as well on behalf of my bill.
Did they pass it?
No, they did not. So your ballot is still going to say counselor, and it's going to confuse everyone. What is this counselor on the ballot?
What would be the negatives on not passing it, something that as simple as that?
The Massachusetts Constitution calls it counselor. The word governor's council does not appear in the Constitution.
So you have to change the
You-
Constitution.
to do it right, you change about 10 places in the Massachusetts Constitution, about 50 places in state law
Wow.
to get it all cleared up. But I'm not so sure you couldn't pass a bill to leave the word counselor there, but just put the modifier on there.
Yeah, Governor's Council. Yeah, because I've had people ask me, what is the Governor's Council? And I try to explain the little bit I know about it, because lots of times they'll go into the ballot and they just either don't vote for anybody on the council, or they don't know, or they vote for everybody
Right,
because they don't know what to do.
exactly.
what are the things that you look for in a judge to decide whether he or she
Right.
is qualified to be a judge in the Commonwealth? Outside of saying, gee, this person donated X number of dollars to, to somebody.
And that actually is part of the record, who they donated to, and it's an important part of the record because you want to see.
You want to see everything.
Yeah,
I'm
make sure this person's coming in straight and not based on who they've donated to. But the biggest thing I look for is someone that follows the rule of law. In the Constitution, it's the legislature that sets policy. They're the ones that set the laws. That's not the job of a judge. A judge's job is simply to follow the law that the Constitution and the legislature have set forth. You apply the facts to the law, and that's how you make the decision. And if the judge doesn't like the law, I'm looking for someone that can put that bias aside and just stay with the law. It's very, very important. Otherwise, you get totally different justice in Salem District Court as you do in Newburyport District Court, as you do in Roxbury District Court. And you want everything to be the same. I've seen this in some of the federal courts where, for patent law, certain courts were better than others, and you had huge fights over venue. You shouldn't have fights over which is the proper court to go in, because everyone should have confidence that they're going to get the same justice no matter where they go.
Absolutely. Well, I know that as far as Judge Feely was concerned, apparently he had a very good reputation in the past. What happened?
I don't know. He was a district attorney originally and moved into the judgeship, and you're right, he was well thought of for many years. In the last couple of years, he's just seemed to...
He drank the Kool-Aid?
Went off in his own
Yeah.
direction.
No, I was told that by somebody who had worked with him
Yeah,
up until about 4 years ago. And,
I've heard the same thing.
you know, I said, well, that was 4 years ago. And now he's letting these illegals, aliens go when they go out and they kill people.
Well, you know, if for any specific case, the nice thing about our system is we isolate the judges from political whims and public opinion and let the judge be independent. Our system is set up very well. But with Judge Feely, it's not one or two cases. I think I've heard of at least 10 cases where he's let people off on low bail. The defense attorneys all know that they just keep appealing until they wind up into Judge
Into his
Feely's
court.
and they're going to get
Oh,
off.
boy.
Or off at least on a low bail.
Yeah. He has overturned some lower courts, too, hasn't he?
Yes, he has. The deputy sheriff that was killed up in Maine by someone, that particular criminal had been stopped in Haverhill after a car accident with drugs and guns in the car. Haverhill District Court put him up for thousands of dollars of cash bail, I believe, and they just kept appealing until they got to Judge Feely, and it was like $100 bail or something, and the guy got out, went up to Maine, and 1 month later there's a dead deputy sheriff, and everyone's hunting for that particular criminal. Didn't have to happen.
No, it didn't.
Because they had him on enough charges to keep him, and the district court judge said, "No, you're staying in Middleton." So,
What differentiates you from your opponent? In other words, why should people vote for you as opposed to your opponent?
two key reasons. One is the philosophy, that I'm looking for judges that follow the rule of law. My opponent is very much a policy person. She's looking for judges that follow her policies, and that's what she wants on the bench. She would do much better as a state legislature for what she's trying to do. So she's in the wrong position. Second of all, she has no experience with interviewing candidates and has made some huge mistakes. As I mentioned, I've done quite a bit of interviewing for corporate jobs, and I know how to ask the questions. I know what makes a good judge. In 2016, there was a Roman Catholic, devout Roman Catholic, that came before the Governor's Council, and she went into a hard line of questioning against him because he was a Roman Catholic, with the implication that he couldn't be a good judge because he was a devout Roman Catholic. Then, earlier this year, there was a candidate, I won't even mention his name, from a very good, aggressive defense attorney. So aggressive that the American Bar Association said he is unqualified. Because at one point, in trying to push his case with the assistant district attorney, he got into a shoving match with him and had assault charges filed against him. In another case, he followed the judge out into the parking lot, and at the judge's car, he verbally accosted him. And my opponent said, this particular defense attorney would be a perfect judge, and she went to the press because she was so upset that the ABA, or the Bar Associations, gave him an unqualified rating. And the Bar Associations tend to be, it's very rare that they give an unqualified. And actually, it really embarrassed the poor attorney because he got it qualified. It was quietly going to go away, and she went to the press to complain about it. And he got the press naturally went, okay, here's the stories of the assault on the district attorney. Here's the story of accosting the judge. And that was front page news in the Salem News and Gloucester Times. The poor attorney, had his name dragged through the mud because of my opponent.
Wow.
That's she just doesn't know how to evaluate judges properly.
Now, you're running for what, a 2-year term?
2-year term.
Okay.
So as soon as I win November 6th, I got to start running again.
Just like the legislators do.
Yes.
Well, we have about 3.5 more minutes. Would you like to give a final statement before we close?
Sure. Governor's Council is probably the most important position in Massachusetts government that you've never heard of. And it's, very few people know when I'm out campaigning, I've got to explain the position and explain why it's important. And once they realize, okay, we don't elect judges, we elect Governor's Council, everybody gets how important this position is. And we need to make sure that who we put on the Governor's Council is someone that knows how to evaluate judges, knows what a good judge is, has some understanding of the law, which I certainly do with all my patent work, and is someone that's looking for a judge that will simply follow the rule of law and let the legislature set policy. So it's very important. And while I'm at it, let me answer the one question that everybody asks that you haven't.
What's that?
Yes, I think I'm related to Charlie Baker. I might be an 8th cousin.
Oh, is that right?
Right. He
That's
says
funny.
his family goes back to Yarmouth, Maine in 1800, and my father has my family in Yarmouth, Maine from about 1750 to about 1900. So there's got to be a tie in there someplace.
That's
But-
funny.
And try Ancestry.com. Little advertisement there.
Well, all of the stuff on the Bakers from Ancestry.com is from my father. Because my father did all of the research and he put it up there. So, I know the Samuel Bakers and the large families they have. It's just which Samuel Baker's child went to New York to be Charlie Baker's family. It's that name that I don't have.
Well, Rich, we wish you lots of luck,
Thank you, Gail.
and thank you for coming on the show.
It's been fun.
And I'm sure we'll see you again.
Very good.
Once you get elected, we'll have you down
Yes.
after a while and see how you like your job.
Yeah.
What I'd like to do, maybe, is have me back, if we've got a judicial candidate coming in, I'd like to put him on so people can get to know who the new judge to the area would be.
Sounds
That's
like a plan.
Yeah, it sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, we would do that.
Okay. So I want to thank you all for watching. I hope you have been well informed about the Governor's Council. I don't want you to forget to vote. It's coming up November 6th. Okay. And thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.